Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and welcome to the Faculty of Science Careers in Science Faculty Information Night at the University of Calgary. I'm Nancy Chibry. I'm the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs and Student Affairs in the Faculty of Science. And we are so pleased to see you. It's such a great turnout for this evening, and that some of you are in the Faculty of Science or you're considering joining us. And hopefully we will be the next step in your educational journey. In a few moments, I'm going to introduce you to our Dean, Kristen Bates, from the Faculty of Science. But before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. I would also like to note that the University of Calgary is situated on land adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River, and that the traditional Blackfoot name of this place is Mohkinstsis, which we now call the City of Calgary. It's so important that the land acknowledgement is not just words, but actions. And it's important to know that even the smallest acts in our daily lives can make a huge impact on others and the world around us. I'm going to tell you about two personal stories where small acts have a big impact. So the first one happened a few years ago. I'm sorry, something caught in my throat. So a few years ago, when my children were quite small, and we were out walking our dog, and I had stopped to pick up filling up the drinks. That's awesome. So we were out walking our dog, and I had stopped to pick up after someone else's dog. And one of my children said, "Mommy, why are you doing that?" And I said, it's important that we all do our part to not only keep our neighborhood nice for us to enjoy, but also for others who come after us. My children are now teenagers, but whenever we're out walking, it's really nice to see that whether we're in our neighborhood or in other neighborhoods, they'll stop and pick up garbage, and they're very big on recycling, so don't put something in the garbage that really should go in the recycling bin. So it's really nice to see that. The second story I have is about an incident that happened here on campus over a year ago. So I was just having the worst morning, and I wasn't in the best headspace. And while I was walking through one of the corridors, it was actually between the biology building and social sciences, in my arm I had my laptop, my phone, papers, pens, and for some reason I tripped and I did a face plant on the floor. Now I thought it was deserted, but all of a sudden 2 students from out of nowhere came rushing up to me. They're offering to help me up. They're gathering up my stuff, and they're saying, "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Do you need us to help you get to your next destination?" And at the time I was very embarrassed, and my head was down, and I don't know if they picked up on that, and they started joking with me. And one of the students said to me, "That was an epic fall." And I'm like, "Really?" And they said, "And you held your coffee the entire time." And then I looked at them and they said, "And it didn't even spill. And you just went," and it was there. And I said, "You have to have your priorities." And then we laughed. And what started off as a really bad day for me, that fall could have added to, that's just another thing that's bad happening in my day. I left with a smile on my face. And so, as I said, those small acts of kindness in our everyday lives can have huge impacts on others. So those students had no idea that they changed my attitude for that entire day, and it ended up being a pretty good day by the end. And that leads me to our guest over here, and also our employers that are up the stairs. I know all of you have very busy lives, but you have all graciously agreed to join us tonight, allowing us, the Faculty of Science, to offer this wonderful experience to our current science students and those looking to become a science student. And what you might not realize is that just like those students who helped me on that day, Your words tonight could make a positive difference in the day or lives for those students attending here tonight in person or who are joining us online this evening. So I want to give a huge thank you to everyone for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us tonight to help guide students on their career paths. And now I have the honor of handing things over to our Dean, Kristen Bates, who will lead you into the rest of the evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. It is so important, especially as we come out of COVID, to be kind. But not just being kind, we're here today to talk about science and all the amazing careers in science you could possibly have. You don't even know what you can do with that science degree. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So, as Nancy mentioned, we have, let's see, how many people here from the high school? Put your hands up. Oh, you know, I'm a dean, man. You got to do class participation. All right. And the parents. Awesome. I hope some of you parents are graduates of this wonderful university. And then we have our own students. Awesome. So, if you're a high school student, you can go and chat with any of our lovely students here and hear a bit about their experience. And I also want to give a shout out to all our partners from the community. So many of them that you'll see tonight when you walk up the stairs. Go visit all the different groups. These are Calgary's employers of our graduates, scientists, and you're going to be shocked at the diversity of these companies. So I really also want to give a big shout out to all our sponsors here tonight. Woo! And you're going to ask yourself, why would some of these companies hire a scientist? Like WestJet, right? Like, you going to be a stewardess? Are you going to be a pilot? You would be shocked at the number of science graduates who work in one of Calgary's top employers. And they are going to come from different backgrounds. So, and why is that? It's because scientists, if you have science background, you have not just a firm grounding in science, and that could be a specific discipline like biochemistry or physics, but you are a natural problem solver with an instinct to investigate, to find the answers why, to use data, inform decisions by data. And so you are going to be the ones who can solve problems, whether they're small or whether they're the world's greatest problems that we face, such as climate change. And that, because you have those problem-solving skills, you can do anything. Whether you follow traditional paths and enter medicine or law, whether you start your own companies, create programs, whether you become a science policy graduate, you could think about building the future of wearables in fashion. Like, the world is honestly your limit. You can even think about going to space with that science degree. And I'm going to tell you a secret. So I've come here from Ottawa. I was recruited here to this amazing city and university. I've been here 11 months, and I can honestly say, and I've lived lots of places, let me tell you. Of all the places I have lived, Calgary is the most innovative. Calgary is on the cusp of a revolution, and they are going to need so many scientists. So Calgary needs you. So you're going to have limitless opportunities with a science degree. So before we go on to our main event, just a few housekeeping events. If you need to go to the washrooms, they're on either end of the hallway on all levels of this building. Of course, you have exits if there ever is a fire alarm. Let's hope there won't be. And if you need help with anything, you can talk to any of our volunteers and student ambassadors. They are wearing a red or black Faculty of Science shirt. Put your hands up, any of our volunteers. We also have amazing tables at the front that will highlight all our different academic programs. So now let's get started. I'm here to introduce you to Crystal Phillips, who will be our moderator for this alumni panel this evening. Crystal is an entrepreneurial, a former elite athlete, a founder of Branch Out Neurological Foundation, and the health lead at Thin Air Labs Incorporated. This is already a great example of someone with a diverse career pathway. You can do anything you want. I'm just pointing that out with a science degree. And Crystal has created a nationwide network of public, private, and governmental and charity leaders. This network, combined with their experience and the competitive edge of being an athlete, allowed her to bring solutions to ventures that accelerate their growth. As the founder and director of Branch Out Neurological Foundation, Crystal has raised over $3 million for neurological research in universities across Canada. That is an incredible achievement for a single individual. So I want to thank Crystal for being here tonight and being our moderator. So with that, I can't wait for our discussions to begin, and we will bring out our panel.
Okay. Well, hello, students, past students, prospective students of the most entrepreneurial university of this whole country. Did you know that? No? We are nominated as the most entrepreneurial university of all of Canada. That is something to be super proud of, and it's amazing to be amongst all the future and present entrepreneurs. And also, we are going to learn from a lot of them on stage tonight. My name is Crystal Phillips. You heard a little bit about my background. It's far from science, but it's really cool to be able to still work in that scientific field. I joke that my background is skating in circles because I was a competitive speed skater for many years. And I was kind of like a pretend student who would come to the Good Earth and now I'm trying to think of all my favorite spots, and it's been too long. I'm old now. Anyways. What's really cool for us tonight is that whether it's in fashion tech or space plasma, whether it's learning about how to turn carbon dioxide into rock, there are so many career paths with so many diverse backgrounds and then diverse future careers. And what I also love about learning more about the panelists tonight is that they all have side hustles. It's like you have this idea of what your future is going to look like, and there's always yes and. There's so much more than some of your biggest dreams. So really excited for everything tonight. And before I have them introduce themselves, I'm just going to do a really brief one note on each of our panelists. So starting with Bethany Ladd, I'll let you, just raise your hand, whose spinoff just won the X Prize from the Musk Foundation. That's Elon Musk, right? I've heard of him. That's amazing. Next, we have Gijs van Rooyen. How'd I do? Okay. I practiced that name a bit. He has 24 issued patents. Woo! Then we have Teddy Syed, who is the first in Canada to receive an entrepreneurial PhD. And we have Emma Spanswick. She collaborates with NASA and the Canadian Space Agency. And lastly, we have Daria, a successful entrepreneur and currently in her first year in med school. Welcome. So I'll let you each, starting with you, Beth. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. You got 1 to 2 minutes. No pressure.
Sure. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Bethany Ladd. I am a co-founder and head of operations at Carbon Minerals. It's a carbon dioxide removal startup. I also wear a second hat of still being a researcher at the University of British Columbia, as Carbon Minerals is a spin-out from our lab there. I am from New Hampshire originally, but now I'm a dual citizen here in Canada. And I went to school in Rhode Island, Brown University. I then worked for the Park Service right after high school before going to college. After college, I worked for the Forest Service before doing my master's. And then that master's is how I came here to University of Calgary. I got my degree in hydrogeology just over there. And then built a career managing large applied interdisciplinary research projects. And the last one that I did in carbon mineralization, I turned into a company with 2 co-founders. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Daria Vankova. As you know, I'm a first-year medical student. I am also operating a consulting firm that I've co-founded. We focus on helping startups in biotech to commercialize their products and raise money. Prior to doing that, I was CEO of a diagnostic startup that was a University of Calgary spinoff. Did that for a couple years, and prior to that, I did a bachelor's in zoology here at U of C, as well as a master's in biomedical technologies, a program that I'm very glad I took. And they actually have a booth set up over there for those of you who are thinking of doing a master's. And yeah, that's how it goes now. Lots of things going on at the same time with school and work, but making it all fit somehow.
My name's Emma Spanswick. Some of you students may know me because I teach physics here. I'm an assistant prof over in the Department of Physics and Astronomy. I actually do space physics, which means we study the natural plasma environment around the Earth. It's a very dynamic plasma environment. It's what causes the aurora that you may see. It also impacts our technology in terms of satellite communications, satellite positioning, even HF radio. And so I do a lot of work in plasma dynamics and impacts of that on technology. We also are unique in Canada here in terms of our ability to design, build, and then field these instruments, and then take the data ourselves and then do the studies. That's why we partner with NASA and the Canadian Space Agency. We really do have a niche expertise here in terms of our ability to, I call it cradle to cradle, right? We design the instruments all the way through to then using them, and then use those instruments to then drive science forward so that we then know what we need to design next. And so that's really my area.
Hi everyone, my name is... Wait, working? Oh, I guess I can hear myself now. Awesome. Hi everyone, my name is Teddy Sayed. I did my PhD, undergrad, and master's all here in computer science. These days I work at Microsoft Research. I lead a small team that does wearables. We work a lot these days on textiles. So you're probably wondering how I ended up going from computer science to textiles. We'll probably get into a bit later. But very high level story, I was interested in working on wearables, did a lot of hardware, software here in Calgary, learned a lot of that stuff, jumped to Microsoft, spent a lot of time, I think I mentioned before I was an entrepreneur. I did entrepreneurial PhD. So worked a lot with companies, kind of understand end to end how to build a piece of software or hardware, make it commercialized and scale. So did a lot of that at Microsoft. And then today I kind of work a lot with, you name a fashion brand or a brand that works with textiles, I work with them. We try to commercialize their ideas. So that's where I am now today.
Hi everyone, my name is Gijs van Rooij and I'm currently the Chief Scientific Officer for an organization called Genome Alberta. So we fund very large scale research projects. How I got here, I think it was 1989. I think I put on a backpack. I mean, as probably people can tell from my name and accent, I was not born and raised there. I was born and raised in the Netherlands. Put on a backpack, intended to spend probably about 4 to 5 months here in Calgary. that was in 1989. So I guess you know what happened. And so I started my PhD here in 1989 in biological sciences, Faculty of Science here. I was very fortunate to be partnered with a very entrepreneurial professor, Dr. Morris Maloney, here at the Faculty of Science. And during my PhD, I developed I was able to reprogram plants to start producing pharmaceutical proteins that people currently take as pharmaceuticals that you find in in your pharmacy cabinets. And so that's also where most of the patents came from. It was quite a revolutionary sort of kind of technology that I helped develop over there. So resulted in a startup company. So I worked for the startup company for about 10 years. And then I decided I wanted to broaden my horizon, and I became the Chief Scientific Officer for Genome Prairie and Genome Alberta. And as mentioned, we fund very large-scale research projects. Many of those are funded here at the University of Calgary. Many of them are actually taking that great science that they're developing and they're turning that into their own startup companies. So I've been involved in sort of mentoring some of the entrepreneurial scientists now myself and helped them to start up companies that arose here out of the University of Calgary.
I feel like our job's done here. Like, I'm inspired. I don't know about all of you. Did everyone notice just the range and the variety of careers that they've all taken in the area of science, which is so broad but has so many cool opportunities to go through? I'm reminded of, I throw a bike tour as a fundraising event, and there we have PhD neuroscientists, and we also have Olympic gold medalists. And the PhD neuroscientists are so nervous, and they're often, they feel like they have imposter syndrome because they're going to go meet a gold medalist in a sport. And then the gold medalists are like super imposter syndrome, and they're like, oh my goodness, they have a PhD, they're a doctor, they're in science, like I don't even understand how like electricity works. So it's fun to see that beyond this, like when I hear everybody talking, I'm so excited as a non-science professional. So I just hope that you all really appreciate the work that you do and the admiration that everybody has for you, no matter what career you have going forward. So enough about my rambling. I want to ask a question to all the panelists. Picture yourself over there for a second, and I wonder if you can remember the feelings and maybe some of the fears that you had going into a science degree. Does anyone want to speak to some of those fears? Daria, do you want to start?
For sure, yeah. I mean, the uncertainty and the fears were endless, starting and going through my bio undergrad degree, because at a certain point, it feels like your only option is like research, working in a lab every day, academia. And I knew just based on my personality, that's not what I wanted to do. That's not what I saw myself doing all my life. So I started probing like more into what else is out there, what else could I do, and closer to like last year of undergrad and then starting my master's in biotech, which really does do a great job of bridging that academic mindset more so to the industry side of things. I've started seeing a wider scope. So anything from working in clinical trials, regulations for biotech products or products to be consumed, like such as pharmaceuticals, or working in pharmaceuticals. It's like a huge industry in itself. And then on the other side of biotech, there's agriculture, which is huge in Alberta. There's the energy sector that's going through a revolution right now as well. Just being cognizant of all those options helped me gain confidence in that there's a lot of options, and actually an opposite problem appeared in that I started thinking, there's so many options. What do I want to do now that I know that I have all these options? And that's kind of where that exploration for me happened.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to answer? Biggest fears?
Maybe
Yeah.
I can start. I think very similar fears. I think when you are, I was doing my PhD, and of course a lot of uncertainty. And one of the biggest uncertainties that I sort of faced was, what's going to be next? I got married during my PhD. We had a daughter during that PhD, and I was wondering, how can I support my family and continue to enjoy the city that I really came for to enjoy? That was back in early 90s, so not a whole lot of opportunities for or at least not as many opportunities as there are now for science graduates to take their career in a different level. So very similar fears, not really knowing whether there was going to be a career for me towards the end. And of course, as mentioned, I was very fortunate, I think, to be partnered with a very entrepreneurial professor who completely changed my mind about what all the options are. And so again, during my career, of course, I did a lot of science, but also was exposed to talking to investors. I mean, what is it like to do fundraising? Practicing public speaking, or at least speaking in front of those investors in like a dragon den kind of scenario where they really put you on the spot. I mean, those were really so that professor really opened my mind to, you know what? You are in the Faculty of Science, you can become a scientist, but there is a lot of things that you can do with a science degree. Much of it involves science, but a lot of it actually does not involve science directly, but you need a science background in order to make a meaningful difference.
Yeah, I love that. And that actually leads me to my next question. I'm curious what other skills and what other pieces of knowledge did you gain through your academic ventures that you wouldn't have maybe signed up for and it surprised you? Can we think of anything? Teddy, maybe we can start with you this time.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, so I did my undergrad and master's in PhD in computer science. But what I am now is, I would say, I'm a multitude of things. I do electrical engineering, I do fabric, I dip chemicals in fabric for some odd reason, and I measure how resistant they are. Like all these weird random things, but a lot of that came from my journey as an entrepreneurial student where, I had this idea with a co-founder. We wanted to build this little smart scale. We pitched it. I did a lot of electronics, just I needed to learn it, so I did it. And through that journey of trying to do that first startup and failing, I learned you can just keep going. So after that point in my PhD, I just kept going. I learned how to do electronics, fabric. I did a lot of fashion shows around the world, traveled quite a bit, learning how to do working on fabric and sewing in electronic stuff I would never have done before. So fast forward today, like that skill that I learned sewing a little piece of electronics on a fabric, now I'm dipping chemicals in fabric, right, and trying to measure stuff. So I would say the entrepreneurial journey is very important as a student. Because it makes you grow in ways you just don't expect. So nowadays I give keynotes at conferences, I lead small teams, I teach people on the product side of Microsoft. So it's stuff I wouldn't have done if I hadn't done it here.
Wow, love that. Who would have thought? Fashion tech, hey?
It's really weird, but I'm there now.
Love it.
I'd also like to speak to the importance of having that science background. When you're trained in science, you're trained in the scientific method, you're trained in problem solving, you make observations, you make a hypothesis of why that is, then you test it. Does it work? It's problem solving, it's puzzle figuring out. And those are skills that are so transferable across the spectrum. And I was having a conversation too with my CEO the other day, who his background, is in business and commerce. But he was saying, it's way harder for him to learn how to do the science aspect of our company than it is for me to then go pick up sales. Like I can go learn sales, I can go learn marketing. But having that science background first was, I think it's so important. So I'm glad that I did science.
Thank you, love that. Emma?
Yeah, I can add to that.
Great.
As someone who went through physics, you might think that we sit around and solve equations, and that's what we do. But in fact, some of the greatest skills I got through my physics program was when I started working on the research side and dealing with instrumentation, dealing with data, managing small projects, working with other team members. And then you fast forward a few years of working on these style of research projects where you have this vast breadth of experience, and then you find yourself in NASA review panels, right? Or sitting at a table with a bunch of European Space Agency engineers talking about what's the best thing to do for this instrument that we want to put on this spacecraft. And it's that science background, right? They look for the scientists because we're the ones who have come through that problem solving. We're the ones with that breadth of experience, right? They don't go to the engineers for those key points. They go to the scientists because we're the ones who know the data that's coming out the other side and how we need to use it. Right, and so from that perspective, a science background is extremely powerful when you start to move in those spaces of, instrumentation, engineering, and problem solving, management. It's an invaluable tool in your back pocket.
Well, I feel like the answers already came for my next question, which is, did the curriculum prepare you for your next career goals? Any no's there, and why not? Or would you say they did a great job of preparing you in ways that you weren't even expecting?
So I can say from my perspective,
Yeah.
So I did my bachelor's degree here, then I did my master's, then I did my PhD. And immediately out of my PhD, I was recruited to Los Alamos National Laboratory to work in their intelligence and space research group. We were fully prepared. We were on par with everybody. In fact, the opportunities were so great in Calgary for what we do. Everybody in the US community knows what we do here. They look for U of C graduates in the US.
Wow.
So yeah, we have a very, very good program here.
That's exciting.
If I can add to that. I think from my experience, I think the science PhD, I mean, that prepared me very well to be an excellent scientist and a group leader in science. But if you want to build a career, just being a scientist is not sufficient by itself. As mentioned, I mean, I started managing a large group of individuals. I wish I would have taken like a management of human resources course. For instance, that was not part of my science degree. I mean, I went back to the Faculty of Continuing Education here at the University of Calgary and got a certificate in financial management because I felt, I was preparing budgets, I was talking to financial people, I wanted to speak their language. And so I think, as Bethany indicated earlier, that scientific underpinning, that is really gives you the solid foundation, but it's not sufficient. And I think, again, encouragement for everyone to continue to learn. And if you look now at the kind of micro-credentialing programs that are available here at the University of Calgary that gives people an opportunity while they start a career and they feel they need some additional education in a particular topic, they can do this in the evenings. They can do that during a summer. And so encouragement for everyone just to take advantage of that. Never stop learning. So continue to learn, continue to challenge yourself.
Love that. Teddy?
I'm just gonna add, working? All right, we go again. All right, so I was just gonna add one more point to everyone else's points. I think one of the benefits of science is it really teaches you how to learn, and you can take that basically anywhere. As I mentioned before with my journey, I've just picked up stuff along the way and I've become quite good at the things I do. But science in and of itself should not be just the only thing you do. Yes, we have a curriculum. Yes, grades are important, but there's all the other things that you have to do along the way. So do a little side hustle, learn a new project, try out something new. It'll eventually add into your pool of things that you do.
So that makes me wonder, the last three at the end, is there anything that you wish that you did differently? I mean, you talked, Emma, about being so prepared and being really excited, and that was such a good reward. But if you went back?
So for me, I just stumbled my way through my undergraduate. I feel like, actually, I've stumbled my way through my entire career, and it's about taking advantage of the opportunities, I think. So for me, again, it's just about, there was an opportunity to do something. So, okay, I'll go do this now for a little bit. Oh, look at the skill I picked up, right? Now there's an opportunity over here. And when you start doing those things and taking advantage of those opportunities, people notice. And that's what happened with me. So people started to notice. You go to conferences and they notice the skill sets you're building up and they start to talk to you. And then doors start to open, right? So it's just about harnessing those opportunities as they show up. So find that research project you want to work on. Find the prof who's doing the cool thing that you want to get involved in, right? If you start to do those things and you start to follow what you want to do and your interests, right, you'll start to pick up the skills and doors will open. And that's how I ended up. So I don't really have any regrets. There's not really anything I would say I would do differently, because I kind of just, I felt like a pinball. I was kind of just moving around as to where was fun at the time. And I ended up here.
That's really cool. It reminds me of that quote that I was going to ask you to bring up, which seems relevant to this.
Okay, I can say it. Okay,
if it's worth.
It's worth saying. So in our group, as we're trying new things, we always say if it's worth doing poorly. Okay, because we never get it right the first time. We know we're not going to get it right, but if it is worth doing, let's do it poorly the first time, and we will learn. And we will learn what we need to do, and then we will do it better the next time. And so we never, when we set out a new project, we never think we're going to get it in one. Nope. I'm planning, okay, on revision 14, where do I think we're going to be? Right? And that's how these development programs work. That's how NASA works, right? This is how you do it. You do the same thing over and over and over again until it's ready to launch. And so, yes, if it's worth doing.
Quite literally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Daria?
I don't think anything that I've done in school could have prepared me for my path because I just did a complete 180 in terms of where I ended up for the first few years after I graduated. I always thought I was gonna go into medicine, but I've ended up becoming an entrepreneur, not even knowing what the word entrepreneur means. And that comes with a lot of learning. And as mentioned by everybody here, having a science degree, it's not like you're applying science everywhere, but the ability to learn and teach yourself and get through hurdles, I think, is what's highly transferable. So I would always think to myself, okay, if I did that stats code on R, I can probably figure out what this due diligence process is for accepting an investment. And two completely different things, but that mindset and the way you approach problems, no matter what stands in your way, I think it becomes very strong, which is why I'm super glad that I did the degrees I did in science. And now going back to school, having a much wider perspective, there's absolutely nothing I would change about my my education, my career path. All of it in its unique ways have added to my perspective and how I see my career transform down the road.
Thank you.
Well, I think Emma and Daria answered that really well. I think the only thing that maybe I'll add is that hindsight is 20/20. So I also don't have regrets because I'm really happy about where I am today. But I had regrets in the moment. Like, I thought I made so many wrong decisions, and that will happen. You've probably already experienced it. So it's just about, again, persevering. If you need to change course, that's okay, and you change course, or you persevere through. I kind of just think everything works out, but everything works out because you make it work. And so, yeah, I just be prepared for there to be ups and downs, which I'm sure we all know about those.
Really good advice. Thanks for all those answers. Now I have a tough question. When you were younger, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? What was your idea? Emma, you're laughing. Let's hear from you.
So, well, I grew up in a family of doctors, so it was expected,
pressure.
Right, that I would become a doctor. When I was younger, I wanted to be a vet, because I liked animals and it was kind of like a doctor, and I thought my parents would be okay with it. And I can remember I was one of those lucky people in high school. I had a really inspiring physics teacher. Like, he was fantastic. And I can still remember the day I came home and I said to my mom, I'm like, Mom, I think I want to go do physics. And she's like, mm-hmm. Okay. And then I came home the next day and there was a book ready for me on my dinner place. And it was called How to Get into Medical School. So, and then the argument became, well, physics is it's a first degree, then you go into medical school. And I was like, okay. But I think, yeah, she was okay with me doing a PhD in physics in the end. But yeah.
Wow. I mean, most parents would be proud just with a degree.
Yeah.
How about you, Teddy?
Test. All right, I got this time. Okay.
Got it, first try.
So let's see. For me, when I was growing up, I was super into art. I liked drawing. If anyone's familiar with Spawn, the comic, the creators from Calgary, Todd McFarlane. So I was a huge Todd McFarlane fan. Loved comics, so I thought I would be a comic book artist. But at the same time, I'm doing really well in science in school, and I'm having all the good grades. The normal thing. And it's like, all right, well, maybe you shouldn't do comic books. You should be a scientist or a doctor. So I tried, chemistry for a while, and that was kind of going okay, but it still wasn't quite my passion. To take some time off, and then I kind of found myself between film school and computer science. I flipped a coin. It's on computer science, so I'm here today. But I did make sure that I didn't forget, little Teddy who was interested in comics, because these days I still work on things that are quite creative, like fashion or textiles. I still do a lot of video and very artistic things, and I still have the science side in me as well, right? Like I work with different types of fabric, electronics. So I always maintained that younger Teddy who wanted to be a comic book person. So it's still inside me.
That's so great. Heis?
I'll tell you, I grew up, as mentioned, I grew up in the Netherlands in a farming family of 8 siblings.
Oh,
They all became farmers, so the last thing I wanted to become was a farmer. Fast forward 30 years, I think if I could do it all over again, I would become a biological data scientist, which is equivalent to being a farmer today.
Good
If
point.
I look now at how the farms are being run, how farmers are taking advantage of the genetic or genomic-based technologies to determine which cows they should keep in order to enhance the productivity. If I look at all the satellite technology that's being used to determine, how our crops are performing, that's all data science. And all that is being transferred back to the cell phone, and the farmer can basically control his operation for a large part from his cell phone. So I think if I could do it all over again, I think I would become a biological data scientist or a farmer.
Wow. Daria?
So Emma said both of her parents were doctors. Both of my parents were physicists. But when I was a kid, I would go around telling everybody I'm Britney Spears. So yeah, we're getting there. But in all seriousness, I was also a very artistic kid. I used to draw and sing a lot. And although I'm not pursuing my singing career full time for reasons, it definitely did also translate into some success that I've seen with public speaking, mentoring, and just being able to communicate to a broad audience, whether that's investors, professors, students, partners. I think that's something else that I want to say is if you have an artistic pursuit in your life, try not to compromise it because you're pursuing a career or a job in science or in whatever you decide to go into. Really leverage those talents because you just never know where that's going to help you, and it will help you.
Wow. I love these answers. I need to hear from everybody. Bethany, what did you want to be when you grew up?
My 8-year-old answer was I wanted to be a barber or an astronomer. They're pretty different. Turns out astronomy is a lot of math, and that's not my strong suit. So I did neither, obviously, but I did go more in the science direction. Clearly, I'm not a hairstylist.
Well, you've all really made it in so many unique ways. Let's take it back to right here, right now. You're going to seek a new job. What do you think employers are looking for from science graduates who are looking for a job and a career? Heis, did you want to start?
I think employers, of course, are looking for people with a very solid scientific background. But I think what they're also looking for is for people that can tell the story. I think it's so important to be able to tell the story to investors, to clients, to people that you work with, to your colleagues, so that you're an efficient communicator. So I think communications, being able to speak the language, being able to give an elevator speech for 3 minutes to tell anyone interested in your employer or your company where you work for, if you're able to do that, I think that's what employers are looking for, because they're looking for a person that they can trust to send out there to represent that particular company at a conference or at a client meeting. So communication skills, I think, are really, really important. And again, encourage everyone, if you do not have an opportunity as part of your science degree, join Toastmasters or other organizations where they practice you to speak publicly and practice becoming like a science communicator. Practice on your kids or on your grandmother, and ask her or ask your kids or ask your grandmother, do you know what I'm talking about? And if the answer is yes, you've done a good job.
You can also just practice on me. I'm like the equivalent of your grandmother. Bethany?
Yeah, as someone who is hiring and trying to build a team right now, yeah, I mean, in some cases we are looking for specific skill sets, but the most important things are, you know, will this person persevere through problems? Essentially, we're just trying to figure out one big problem, and so we're looking for people who know how to look at problems and know how to break them down and solve, different components of them. And that grit, have you guys heard of that word? Yeah, that grit, that perseverance, um, and then also just um, that communication side to it is huge. And I would add the writing is huge. There's a lot. You really hone those writing skills. That'll get you pretty far. But yeah, we're looking for good talent and not necessarily specific skills. I mean, that is true for certain roles, but we're looking for a full package of talent. So that can be a lot of different things. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
I think that's super helpful. Now, I just want to mention there is going to be an opportunity for a Q&A. So if anybody has some questions, there's a microphone in the back. If you line up behind that, I'm only going to have one more or two more questions. Do you have a mic as well? Okay. Okay, perfect. So get thinking about your questions, because I have only a couple more questions for the panelists before you get to ask yours. So for a couple of you, I'd like to know, what are the benefits of working in Calgary? We have historically been known as kind of the oil and gas stampede town, but there's so many more opportunities here. And why are more and more people moving to Calgary? What do you love about this city? What opportunities do you think there are, and what inspires you to work and live in Calgary? Emma?
Sure, I can go. So from my perspective in my field, the University of Calgary is the best space physics school in Canada, hands down. And if you stack up the University of Calgary against the world in terms of development of ground-based instrumentation and what we do, we're number one, right? There's a reason that NASA comes to us for certain things. And so there's this sort of, it's the entrepreneurial spirit of Calgary has sort of pervaded the university, where our groups were more adaptable. The institution just behaves differently than other academic institutions. So we can take those high risk, chances on bidding for a big contract from NASA or this Canadian Space Agency. So the story for me comes down to when I was in Los Alamos, and I was looking at coming back to Calgary. I sat down with my boss in Los Alamos and I said, look, I've got this opportunity in Calgary and I can go back. And he looked at me and he's like, we can't touch that. He's like, have a good trip, right? Like there was no other place in the world that could provide the opportunities that are here at the U of C in this particular field. And I feel like that sort of entrepreneurial spirit carries forward into the other areas for all of these other panelists up here.
As a competitive athlete, I love hearing we are number one at something. Feels so good. Doesn't it sound good?
We tell it to U of A all the time.
Oh, I'm actually from Edmonton, so. Daria, did you want to answer? And then we'll hopefully have some crowd questions.
Yeah, and just to add to that, University of Calgary is one of the top research places, research universities. So naturally, a lot of innovation happens here. And I'm finding that the tech startup community is very receptive to that. If you are if you're a professor or you're a research group or you're just a startup starting out with an idea, something you want to do, there's a very strong community here that will support you, whether that's pitch events, that mentors, government programs, they'll help you identify grants, thin air labs. It's very strong here, and people encourage you to keep persevering, keep pushing forward. So this welcoming environment is what I really appreciate as first as a founder, as a startup CEO previously, and now on a consultant side. And I think it's just going to get better and better as we're diversifying the tech sector in Alberta.
Woo, that's super exciting. Okay, now it's your turn. Who here has a question for any one of the members of the panel? Don't all jump up at once. I mean, I know there are a lot of curious minds out here, so okay. Here we go, we got one. Oh,
Hello? Oh, there we go.
perfect.
So I was curious, for those of you who've done your own startups or have your own like offshoots of the University of BC, for example, or the startup with your own company, the consulting one, what was the biggest challenge for actually jumping into the entrepreneurial space?
Do you have a ready answer?
All of it. There's whether you have a science degree or a business degree, nothing's going to prepare you for that. There's a lot of uncertainty that comes with leaving your job and or going straight from school into starting a company. Especially if it's a startup, if you're entering a market that you don't really know exists yet, as things usually go with innovative startups in tech. So that barrier is something that I don't think school can teach you. You just have to find it, find that courage in yourself and have faith that what you're doing is important. But also, I think you have to be ready to fail, and that's an inevitable process. Like that's an inevitable part of running a company. You always have that kind of risk of failing. And you should have that there as something that grounds you, but also as something that pushes you forward and propels you forward to work really hard. For me, the startups that I've been engaged with, they all had a strong like science component, right? There's diagnostics, pharmaceuticals, health tech, more so on the software side. But the moment you start a startup or a company, that just becomes a small fragment of it. Then there's operational side of it, then they need funding, whether that comes from grants or private investments and all those things. And even if you know the technical aspects of how to get that grant, how to talk to potential partners, there's no taking away of that risk. And it's more like a mental mindset that you gotta have or find in yourself.
Nice. All right, next question. Yeah?
Sorry, I just had a follow-up. Speaking on that risk, did you have like a fallback plan, or were you just kind of hedging all your bets on this working?
No fallback plan.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Hearing your guys' story is very related to mine as well, because I start, doing my first master degree in biochemistry, and then I find myself really fascinated by coding, data programming stuff. So I went to this data science program right now. I'm a student of data science right now. So in terms of tech, so what I because I'm in the middle of that, and then what worrying me kind of right now is that this tech industry is struggling right now. I mean, a lot of layoff news all over the place, and then you just start wondering, okay, am I actually in the right direction or not? And then, so I just want to hear from your perspective, like what will look like in terms of tech in Canada or in Calgary specifically, probably. Thank you.
Sounds like a Teddy question.
Okay, so I guess I'll give it to you from my perspective, since I have friends in pretty much all the big companies that are getting laid off. So the challenge with what you're seeing on the news is that a lot of it is there was a bit of overhiring during COVID. So people were at home, services were up, so I hired more. So actually what's happening right now is actually a contraction of what it should have been before. But in terms of data science and things like that, I think If you have talent, you're very good at coding, you'll be fine. Talented people will always find a job no matter what. And I would say for you specifically, if you really want to get a good job and be safe in tech, learn some AI or learn AI, machine learning, things like that. That will make you quite safe in this space. But in general, what you read in the news is not actually what's happening. It's just there was a lot of overhiring. So, yeah.
A lot of noise. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
We have one up there.
One up here? Okay, great.
This is for those who have multiple patents. With your first idea, how did you know where to start and get it patented in the first place?
Looks like a you question.
I think it's patenting or becoming an inventor on a patent is actually quite an interesting process because you need to meet those patenting criteria. It needs to be novel, unobvious, and it needs to have utility. So when I worked at the company Symbiosis Genetics, so one of the first things that I did when I came in the office, I was basically sitting around with my coworkers and we talked about all the things that went wrong in our experiments. And then our patent guy who was sitting in the corner and said, that's great. If you did not get the result that you expected, you meet the first criteria of patentability is because it was unexpected. And so I think that is what that's what it's all about. If I look at my career and my contribution as an inventor, a co-inventor, I'm just thinking now, I don't think I'm a sole inventor on any patent. And so the invention process, it's a collaborative effort. And so it's a matter of brainstorming, talking to your colleagues about whether things worked or did not work, what is novel about it, what the potential applications are, going back and forth, and then really figuring out whether anybody is going to be actually interested in what you have invented. Because that's sometimes what people forget is, I mean, getting a patent is actually relatively easy, but actually coming up with a patent that in the end is going to make some money, that is a little bit more of a tricky question. I mean, I think statistically it's only 4% of the patents that are issued are ever going to make any money at all. So to answer your question, I think becoming an inventor, it's not that complicated. It's sort of thinking outside of the box. It's basically bouncing ideas off your colleagues and always ask the question, if things are not working, you get an unexpected result. Why is it not working? And does it potentially present an opportunity for me to come up with something that I did not expect, but which may have utility for someone else?
I'm going to just add to that. People always think of patents, but there are other types of IP and other ways to protect, your IP really. So sometimes patents aren't the end all be all, and just it's important to if you're doing your research to check out trade secrets and trademarks and all these other different ways to do that. And then I'm not sure if your question was aimed at this, but one other thing to keep in mind is it's not very cheap. There's money involved, and it's hard to bootstrap it when you're trying to do lots of patents, but it is part of the process, unfortunately.
Darn. Yeah. Shucks. Any other questions? We got one more here.
Thanks everyone for coming tonight. I was really interested to hear about your mentioning that it's really important to refine writing skills, and often scientists do have trouble communicating, not just to investors, but to the general public. So my question is kind of a two-parter. What would you suggest as the best ways to refine our technical communication and writing skills? And what are some of the most innovative ways you've seen of communicating in the science realm?
So I think that question is to the schools and the curriculum, because I think having papers, not just exams, but papers in your science classes is critical. Like when I was doing my undergrad, I always had term papers and exams. I was critiqued and I learned through school. To do it on your own, I mean, read good work of others. I think lots of reading can help you get there. What was the second part to that question? Oh, most innovative ways of communicating. I mean, there are lots of mediums these days. I think it's not about like what you use so much as your communication skills and trying to really connect with the audience that you're talking to and have them buy in. You really want them to buy into your message, and that takes authenticity and practice. So Toastmasters, that was a good suggestion. I don't know. Do you have anything else to add?
I mean, I can maybe point to, the poster is here of the Master of Biomedical Technology program. I do a little bit of volunteering for that program, whereas part of the courses that they teach is, they get the students to basically to create a fictitious company and basically pitch that company to investors. And so again, of course their communication skills are being put to the test. And I think the only way you learn is if you do it in front of an audience. And so I have the pleasure of being like a mean mock judge, so to criticize, I think, what they all did wrong, and hopefully they learn from that. To come back to your question about sort of communication skills, or at least the ability to write and the importance of writing, when I was working for Symbiosis Genetics and we're looking for a patent agent, of course, as a startup company, we could not afford the salary of a real patent agent, so we looked for a science graduate that had interest in writing. The person that we selected actually had published a book of poems. And that's the person that we selected as our patent agent, because we knew that this individual loved words, loved playing with words, and that's exactly what you need if you want to become a good patent agent.
Okay, great answers. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to let one more question in because you've been so patient back there.
Is this working? Like there. So I'm currently doing a biological sciences degree, but I picked that more so because of a general interest in the field rather than having a career in mind. What might be some good strategies for investigating career paths within science?
I would start by reading the news, like what's in the healthcare section, what's in the research section, looking at topics that resonate with you, and maybe you come across something and you think to yourself, oh, that's really interesting. Like, I wonder how this project came about to be. And then looking, like researching, what kind of research is going on, what kind of projects or startups or companies are, in our vicinity. In Calgary and in Edmonton as well, there's a lot of great initiatives, research projects and startups in the biotech space with quite a bit of diversity. But I wouldn't even limit it to Alberta. I would look across Canada, United States, and then just reaching out to them and saying, I'm a biology student. I'm really interested in your project. Would you have 20 minutes to talk with me? And people, like when you're a student, people love talking to you. They love telling you about what they're doing because they have no pressure to like impress you per se, but in a way, like they do hope like you get inspired and you find their work meaningful. And from those kinds of conversations, I think you'll just gain a broader perspective of what their life looks like. So another way to do that is going to networking events that are, surrounding tech or biotech or biology projects, or going to like conference events and just networking with people. I think a lot of things that I've personally found interesting and a lot of my ideas came from conversations. So I hear someone talking about a project they're working on and I think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if what worked for A would work for B. And then we kind of test that hypothesis internally. And it's a great way to just gain leads for ideas of how you want to maybe build out your career. I think today the really great thing is there is no pressure to bind ourselves to a single career path. Let's say you're really curious about one thing, you can do that for a few years, and then you can completely change to something else. Maybe you'll do like another like a master's, or maybe I'll do like an educational certificate program that'll propel you into a whole different direction. So no matter what you end up doing, never feel bound to one thing. And also, things will change. Like what's current now will not be current in 5-10 years. Something else will come up. So one thing I would recommend for you is stay flexible, stay open-minded, always be on the lookout what's out there, and check in with yourself of like what's resonating with you personally, and try to create those opportunities for yourself to connect with relevant people and groups.
Daria, those are beautiful final words, and I say final even though I hope you're disappointed as I am, because I feel like that just flew by. We all have so many more questions, thoughts, but the good news is that we get to continue the conversation, and first we'll have some final words, but thank you to all of the panelists for all of your words of inspiration throughout the night.
Thank you so much, Crystal, and everybody here. This has really been an amazing panel because, you know, I'd be thinking of something and then they start talking about it. Like even that last question, how do you find your careers? This is not like what it was for your parents. This is a different world. Jobs you will find through networks. So one thing I would encourage, especially the students here today, learn how to use tools like LinkedIn and come to our LinkedIn workshop that will be in January in collaboration with Haskane, which is an awesome tool here on site. So once again, I want to thank our panelists for a really honest conversation about all the career opportunities. It truly is endless what you can do with a science degree. And I think another theme that came up tonight, it's not just about science and whether you're a physicist or a computer programmer or a chemist. It is the other skills too that are going to make you successful. And University of Calgary is unique compared to so many other programs across Canada and North America. And that is because we're not just here to teach you to be a biochemist. Integrated into our programs are so many of the skills we've learned about today. It is communication, it is writing, experiential learning. We have one of the best internship programs in Canada, and you will see today there are companies here, and the reason these companies are here is because they take on our students as interns. This is an amazing way to build your career. On top of that, University of Calgary truly believes in entrepreneurship. We are Canada's #1 entrepreneurial university. We are also now the top 5 research universities in Canada. You put those two together and like the world is truly your limit. And we believe in that, and we have resources here. We have the Taylor Institute, which teaches our professors to teach you in innovative ways. We have the Hunter Hub for entrepreneurial thinking. You have the opportunity as a science student to go out and take these courses, do a launchpad project, join the genetic engineering team, join the solar car team. You can gain these skills through all the wonderful opportunities you can have here. And if that's not enough, you can have joint degrees. You can do a business degree. I would also highlight that you can join the Masters of Management degree, and there's a table over there that you can do. It's specifically designed for science students who, after your first degree, you can go the Masters of Management in Haskane. You will gain incredible, incredible skills for doing that. So I encourage you to, if you are here already at this wonderful university, take advantage of all the opportunities we have here. If you want to come to University of Calgary, I can't say enough about how amazing our science programs are. And I also want to emphasize we have amazing scholarships. So for all the new high school students thinking about joining us, we have amazing scholarships. And one I want to highlight especially is the new Paul Kennedy Scholars Program, which is one of Canada's largest scholarships. Starting at $125,000, you get to combine undergraduate computer degree with the Master's of Management degree. But that's just one of our many, many scholarships. And we believe in scholarships, we believe in bursaries, because we believe in inclusivity. We think every student who has the ability should get an outstanding education. There should be no barriers. We aim to be Canada's most inclusive science program, and we are already there, and we're only going to get better. So I encourage you to really think about joining us at the University of Calgary. There are lots of displays. You can ask us lots of questions about our programs. I encourage you to go up and down the stairs and talk to all our wonderful partners. They are here with us. One of the few universities that we deeply are committed to partnering with our industries. So come and meet them. Think about doing an internship there. And more importantly, there's a lot of really good food going up those stairs, and bars and drinks. So please come, enjoy your night here, talk to people, and I can't say enough, but the world needs more scientists. So thank you for joining us. Good night.